Come gather around people wherever you roam and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accept it that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving, then you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone. For the times they are a-changing.
I became aware of Dr. King's work and legacy a couple of years after I came to this country. I gained a great respect for his work and legacy, and what his work has impacted me is in the importance of standing for justice for everybody, and to continue his work even in the smallest way.
Dr. King's work and legacy has touched so many people in so many different ways, but as a young white male, he's given me the courage to never give up, never give in, and never accept the words, "You can't." You can. You can do anything you dream of. This is a legacy that I will always remember from Dr. King.
Come writers and critics who prophesize with your pen, and keep your eyes wide open, the chance won't come again. And don't speak too soon, for the wheel's still in spin, and there's no telling who that is naming. For the loser now will be later to win, for the times they are a-changing.
It's helped me to understand the plight of black people and the need to abolish discord towards all people. And also the letter from a Birmingham jail brought me to the realization that the loss, tremendous loss that the world sustained the day that Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated.
Dr. King's legacy to me personally is in the power of patience and persistence in the face of strong opposition and violence and oppression. He teaches us that no matter how hard people come at you, you can wait them out. If you have right on your side, then you can not rise to their level of oppression. You can meet it head on without being violent and still win.
Come senators, congressmen, please heed the call. Don't stand in the doorway, don't block up the hall. For he that gets hurt will be the one who has stalled. There's a battle outside and it's raging. It'll soon shake your windows and rattle your walls. For the times they are a-changing.
When I think about Dr. King's legacy and how things have changed, I think about my son. When he was in 4th grade, he attended the Native American celebration here on our campus with his class from Parkwood Elementary School. And that night at dinner, after I'd seen him on campus, I asked him who one of his friends was. I had seen him interacting with a young man here at the festival, and I asked David who his friend was, and David wanted to know which friend was it and what did he look like, because he had several friends. And I said, "Well, Dave, he was black." And right away David stopped me and said, "No, Dad, I didn't ask you what color he was. I asked you what did he look like." And I really think that is the legacy of Dr. King, encouraging us to look past the color of a person's skin to really see who that individual is.
Come mothers and fathers, throughout the land. And don't criticize what you can't understand. Your sons and your daughters are beyond your command. Your old road is rapidly aging. Please get out of the new one if you can't lend a hand, for the times they are a-changing.
As a Latina, I feel that the struggle that Dr. King carried for equality, although he was at that time talking mainly about
Well, I marched through the storm, and I marched through the rain, and I marched through some sickness and some heartache and pain. And I laid on the ground, and I looked up at the sky, and I prayed to the Lord up above and asked why. But oh no, I'm not tired, I'm not through marching yet, and I'm a-marching till I die. Oh children, this you can bet. So we say, I'm gonna sing out, and I'm gonna march on. And everybody said, I'm gonna sing out, gonna march on, I'm gonna march on. Gonna put one foot in front of the other foot, yes I am. I'm gonna sing out, gonna march on, I'm gonna march on. I got to keep on keeping on, yes I am. Gonna march on, I'm gonna march on. Oh well, my grandmama marched, and my granddaddy too, and I never thought it'd be something that I have to do, but I'll march if I must. I got a mission, you see, and I'll be damned if my children have to march for me. Now I believe in the power of raising my voice, and I believe in the power of making some noise. Now if I die, I can't sing, and if I can't sing, I'll die. So we should sing for one another. Now let's give it a try. So we say, I'm gonna sing out. Oh, I got to keep on keeping on, keep on marching on. My body for good, yeah. Whoa, I'm gonna sing out, sing out, sing out. Whoa, I'm gonna sing out, sing out, sing out, sing out, sing out, sing out. Oh, sing it one
inside your program, you'll have the words, and they'll also be on the screen.
Liberty.
Dr. Ingram, distinguished guests, faculty, staff, and students, it's an honor to stand before you today. This is a wonderful celebration of the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and a long, meaningful tradition at Durham Technical Community College. Today, we are here to reflect and to celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. King and collaboratively envision ways to carry his work forward. Despite the division in this country, we must continue to work together and bring forth his vision. Through our efforts, Dr. King's dream will not die. Today marks 34 years of celebrating the life of a man that have impacted so many. On behalf of Durham Technical Community College, it is my sincerest pleasure to welcome everyone. There are no strangers here, only friends we have yet to meet. So look to your neighbor and simply say, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me to share some reflections on the movie, the coming movie, Best of Enemies. And so to Dr. Ingram, faculty and staff, and I hope there are some students here. Do we have any students in the audience? Few. For the few students and for our colleagues, I want to mention briefly some of the inspirations that I received from a great lady, Ann Atwater. Miss Atwater, I knew her as I was a very young student. So I had the opportunity to walk with her, sit beside her, talk with her during the Civil Rights era. And trust me, she was on the forefront. Also, I had the opportunity to sit with Miss Atwater during the latter years of her life as she was making her transition. And she often said, don't say too much about me when I leave. She said, it's more important that you talk to the young people. She said, remind them of the purpose of education. And I constantly said, well, I think I'm highly educated, Miss Atwater. She said, yeah, but do you know the purpose of your education? I said, well, perhaps to get a good job one day. She said, no, those are the benefits. I said, well, get married, have a family, have a big house, a big car. She said, no, those are the benefits, possibly. She said the purpose of education is to get to know other people. The human being has to know the other human being. So I began to do my research, because I love to do research, and I looked through the archives of the great education scholars, and they said the same thing. The purpose of education is for humanity to know humanity. And the other things that take place are perks, are benefits. She also said, and I'm going to make this very short, she also said, remember to tell the young people to choose a road to walk down in life. I'm very happy if I could say to Ms. Atwater, the students who chose to enroll at Durham Tech have chosen a road to walk down. Now, as you walk down that road, remember, you're on a gravel road. It's not paved yet. Later in life, you will see it becoming paved. And as you walk down that gravel road, you're going to stump your toe, you're going to hurt yourself, and you're going to see a lot of people over here on road Good Time Parkway. And they're going to tell you to come on over. Come on over with them. Now remember, the road of life is a solo journey. So when they're saying, come on over, get with us, reflect. It's a solo journey. And as you walk down that road, you're going to have to take some turns to the right or to the left. Now, I have to interject this because I'm on the campus. Ms. Atwater didn't get a chance to see this. But if you're walking down your road of life, and if you're walking like this constantly, you're going to miss something. When that road turns to the right, you might keep walking straight. And if you walk straight, you might fall off a cliff. If you fall off the cliff, there might not be anyone there to throw you a rope to pull you up. Now, Miss Atwater, if she saw you falling off a cliff, she would say, Ben, Howard, somebody, throw him a rope. That fool just walked off the cliff. They'll pull you up. And then she'll say, honey, are you all right? Because she was a lady full of compassion. She would say, are you okay? Do you need a doctor? Somebody give him some water. Then after she makes sure that you're okay, she'll look at you and I saw her do this. She would look at you and say, okay, fool, the next time you decide to walk off that cliff, there might not be anybody there to throw you a rope. So we'll see if you can get out by yourself. But she was always, always concerned about the young people. So when you see this clip, when you see this preview of this movie, think about Miss Atwater as she will give instructions to young people, because that's what she was concerned about, the future. She will give instructions and she would say to the young people, make sure when you get to that detour in your road, because you know the detour is going to always lead you back to the road. It might take many years, it might be a long detour, but it will lead you back to your road. And in her life, I do believe, she took a detour in her life. That's where she met the individual that she thought was the worst foe that she could ever meet. But because she had traveled her road that was probably paved by that time, she was able to confront her foe, but look at his humanity. And that foe, and you will see it here, became a lifelong friend. When she was passing, she talked about what kind of character it took for her to understand that this foe of the KKK was such a wonderful friend of hers, because they came together on their individual roads and they saw the humanity in each other. So I would like to leave that message with the students, especially. Think of Miss Atwater as a person who never got off her road of life. Thank you.
And Atwater.
Last night, an electrical fire destroyed East End Elementary School.
Mama, where are we gonna go to school now?
Mama gonna find you somewhere real nice to go.
Not gonna have black kids going to temp school.
Oh, come on. They're gonna put them somewhere.
Mississippi putting it down. I'm the hottest round. We gonna beat school segregation once and for all. Listen to me now. You better get your ass down to City Hall tonight. Who's next?
They say you represent a great many people in this town.
Ain't me right about that.
I'm holding a committee meeting. The council will vote to either adopt or reject school integration. I need 2 co-chairs, you and Ann Atwater.
Ann Atwater. I'm the president of CLAMP.
He's about to hand you the keys to school integration, and you're gonna lock the door.
You hear?
Would you look at that crazy white man?
Folks in this town want blacks to stay in their own schools. I'm here to protect my family, so all the better is you don't get in my way.
And well, I'm gonna get in your way.
We're here trying to understand each other for once and stop fighting.
This here does the talking for me.
I have a Bible.
Well, then you ought to know.
No, what?
Same God made you, made me.
Sometimes there are necessary evils for the greater good.
You didn't have to do that. You should have told me.
As long as the C.P. Ellises of the world keep getting their way, ain't nothing gonna change.
She looked at me like I got some kind of monster.
What'd you expect?
I'm talking about home. I'm the president of the Klan. I'm supposed to hate black folks. Now, if I don't believe that, then I got a problem.
Now, what we talking about is important, and you gon' damn well listen to us.
She's in a bad mood today.
Talking about home.
If that doesn't light your fire, then your wood is wet. This summer I attended a meeting. They shared little, bits of our life, and they asked me to share that with you today. And I'd like to preface that by saying your story is just as important as my story. We all have a story, and my story is not really about me. It's about the people who influenced me. And for the sake of time, I have shortened this story. And if you'll sign up for an automotive class, I promise you, I will tell you the whole story. The writer in 1 John says, "There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear." In a publication called First Light, article entitled Influence, Brian Bigger says, "God's given each of us something that has great power to change other people's lives for good or evil. It's called influence." In an article titled "Loving Your Enemies, Christmas 1957, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. says, "We never get rid of an enemy by meeting hate with hate. We get rid of an enemy by getting rid of enmity. By its very nature, love creates and builds up. Love transforms with redemptive power." I wanted to sugarcoat this story. I wanted to make it a simple feel-good narrative. The problem is that the folks who asked me to tell it already know the real story, and you just don't want to face Jackie Mitchell after you tell a different story that she already knows. I don't. The second problem was if I spent my time listening to your story, I would want to hear the raw truth. So for what it's worth, this is my story. I attended Durham Public Schools from 1967 to 1979. I remember the fear, the hostility, the animosity. I remember George Wallace running for president. The segregation, the hurt, the chaos, and the anger. It was all around. Thankfully, growing up in that world, I had the influence of an amazing father. He was born about 10 miles west of Chapel Hill during the Great Depression, and he was a man that believed in a better world. My dad told me that in the 1940s, when he was a teenager, a black family approached him and asked if he could bring his dad's tractor to their farm and help them get the crop in before the rains came. He said he'd be glad to help. Later that evening, several white, prominent farmers showed up at my grandfather's house. They warned him and my dad that should Glenn Loy ever do that again, my grandfather and his family would pay a dear price. Things like that did not shake my father's faith or effort to treat everyone with respect. My father passed away in 2008. Before he died and after he retired, he took a job at McDonald's. He was 70 years old. None of us understood why, nobody in the family. And on his deathbed at Duke Hospital, way about 3 o'clock in the morning, he told me the reason. Everybody knew he was retired. He didn't need the money. In fact, we checked his financial records and he gave away most of what he earned for the last 20 years of his life to local charities. He wanted to connect with people and he wanted to work at a black owned McDonald's. That was why. In the 1950s, when McDonald's had come to Durham, Dad walked up in time to hear a lady behind the registers deny a man service. She said, "We don't serve colored people." My daddy watched this man walk back to his car where his wife and children were waiting for something to eat. Dad ran to him and apologized profusely. He said, "Man, I'm sorry about that. Can I buy you and your family a meal?" The man squared his shoulders, looked my dad in the eye, and he smiled. He said, "Sir, I don't want anything to eat from this restaurant." Dad said, "You know what? I don't either." They both drove off. Influence. That was the father that raised me during the segregation and hate. That was the man who influenced me every day until his death more than a decade ago. When I was 6 years old, Dad and I went to a little store. It was called Ellis Grocery Store, just down the road from East End Elementary. Someone yelled the N-word. I vividly remember my father leaning down and said, "Nathan, don't forget, we don't use that word. And furthermore," and he said in a real loud voice, "I've known more white ones than black ones." Dad was popular with a lot of people. Dad refused to ignore hate. I was at Carrington Junior High School during the 1970s desegregation of Durham Public Schools. I was right in the middle of it. I went to school with sheriff deputies at the end of every hall. Daily I watched ambulances and police cars transport black and white students to the hospitals and jails. But I had an advantage. I'd been taught to treat everybody with kindness and everybody with respect. One day I was running late to gym class. Those of you who know me well are not surprised. I cut through a little small equipment room to save time and make roll call. I run halfway through it before I realized the lights are off. And there were several tall guys with afros blocking my exit into the gym. I froze. Then several more guys came from the corners of the room and circled behind me, and I was in the middle. It was dark except for the light filtering under the doors. I was hit hard and fast. I was kicked. I was cussed. Kept hearing the same words over and over. "Take that, white boy. Take that, white boy." And then it was over as quickly as it began. They walked out the door I'd entered, and I was left in the equipment room, covered in my sweat, my blood, breath knocked out of me. My lips were split, my eyes were black, and my body bruised. But the worst part was now I was scared. I'd never experienced fear. Everything sounds like rhetoric when you're truly afraid. These guys didn't know me. They didn't know my dad with his lofty religious ideas that God created all men equal. They didn't know I was the son of a man who for his entire life had endured the ridicule of angry white racists because he stood up for the rights of black people. They didn't know me. They didn't know that I was raised by a man who threatened me with physical violence should I ever dare use the N-word. I was faced with a dilemma. Was my dad wrong about black people? And would this happen again? Since Carrington had been desegregated, most of the black students would gather at the field at the south end of Carrington and play full contact football at lunch. No safety equipment, just the football. I remember thinking to myself, you can't beat them, join them. My mom had told me many times that a coward dies 1,000 deaths and a brave man only once. Actually, she had to tell me that every year when it came time for the flu shot. That's true. So lunchtime came, the skinny little white boy, yeah, I did used to be skinny, a skinny little white boy made his way to the south end of Carrington, and he sat down in the grass beside a crowd of black students to watch a football game. "Hi, I'm Nathan Smith. It's nice to meet you." At first, I got ignored. But I noticed that the fear died inside of me. Maybe Mom and Dad were right. Over the next several days, I learned their names. They learned mine. Then eventually I got asked, "Hey, white boy, would you like to play?" I said, "Sure. Yeah, I'd love to play." Wow, if I thought the equipment room beating was bad, that was nothing. My lips were busted open again, my body battered and bruised. The wind got knocked out of me over and over and over and over. But this was football, and there was no fear. I distinctly remember an outstretched arm, a black outstretched arm, and the voice said, "Come on, white boy, let's do it again." And I grabbed that arm, and he pulled me to my feet, and we did it again and again and again, and I learned how to play football. Weeks later, one of the white football players stopped me in the hall. He warned me, pointed his finger at me, and says, "You're going to get hurt out there. You've got no safety equipment." I smiled and walked off and thought to myself, "No, I've already been hurt, and you've never spoken to me until today, and those are my friends." The other students saw me as a person, as Nathan. They may have called me white boy, but to them I wasn't just another white guy. I saw them as people too, as friends. They were the friends I played football with during lunch. We were teenagers having fun, and that's how you bridge fear. That's how you learn to care about someone you may not understand. Just get to know them. You stop seeing color when you start seeing friends. Eventually, the school violence calmed down. However, for me, violence ended when I walked out and sat in the grass and said, "I'm Nathan Smith. It's nice to meet you." Yeah, I noticed some of my attackers there, but they weren't attackers for long. They became friends. The other event that literally shaped my life happened 4 years later. In 1979, my dad, who amongst other things was a truck driver, an investor, a businessman, and a lay minister, he bought a building and started a small church in Creedmoor, North Carolina. One Saturday, he and my mom and I went to visit a family north of Creedmoor in a little small town called Stem. Very hot North Carolina day. Dad's 1973 squareback Volkswagen with a 1.5 engine and manual 4-speed transmission stopped running with no warning, and we coasted off to the side of the road. Dad, among other things, was also an amateur mechanic, and he tried to teach me a little bit about cars, but since I had no intentions of ever being a mechanic, I really didn't know much. There was no shade, no houses nearby, no payphone, and no traffic for hours. And since it was 1979, there was no such thing as a cell phone. We melted in the hot sun. My dad tried everything he knew to get this car started, no luck. While Dad prayed, Mom and I sat and sweated, and we all waited for someone to come. Hours passed like days. And then I heard it coming. It was a monster chewing up the road. Then I saw it. It topped a hill, chrome shining in the sun, a dark blue Chevy Chevelle gulping down air, spitting out fuel, and burning up asphalt as it sped down the road in our direction. We were saved. It sped past, and I saw the brake lights come on. The car turned around and pulled up close behind our Volkswagen. Inside were the two of the largest men I'd ever seen in my life. They were black men. The biggest men I'd ever seen in my life. We're out in the middle of nowhere. I'm a skinny kid, less than 6 foot tall, and much bigger than my dad. Understand that racial tension was still high in Durham. And these men did not know us. Would they see us as white? Would they see us as people? I cringed, not knowing what was about to happen. The driver hopped out of the Chevelle and he asked my dad, "You folks need help?" Dad said, "Yes." "Thank you." The driver nodded to his passenger. The sun had beat down on every piece of metal for miles around, and this Chevelle was dark blue. It was hot like an oven. The huge man opened his door, reached on top of the door frame, and pulled himself out of the car. He was paralyzed from the waist down. Placing one hand over the other and sliding his feet, he moved his body again and again and again. He worked his way down to the Volkswagen where the engine was. He took out a book of matches, pulled one loose, unclipped something with wires sticking out of it, and a little small screwdriver, made an adjustment, put it back together. It was done in mere seconds. He only said 3 words the whole time he was there. "Try it now." Dad turned the key and the Volkswagen roared to life. The man pushed himself up. He worked his way hand over hand on that hot metal, and he got back in the car. My dad pulled out his wallet, stepped up to the first man, pulled out all his cash. Please, sir, take this money. It's not enough, but we thank you so much. This huge man put his hands up and he said, sir, we don't want your money. We just wanted to help you. He smiled and the dark blue Chevelle was gone as quickly as it arrived. My mind just churned. This man took his time. He burnt his hands to fix a car for free and rescue white folks off the side of the road that he did not know. And that was 40 years ago. In the last 40 years, I've helped dozens of people fix their car on the side of the road. Black people, brown people, white people, men, women, teenagers. I've stood in the rain, laid in puddles under cars. I've worked in the snow, the heat, and the cold to rescue folks who were scared. I've bought parts and tires for folks who didn't have the money to buy them. I've helped poor people, and yes, I've helped rich people. And no, I'm not a good guy. I am a man who was influenced by love. I was influenced by a dad who taught there's no room for racism. He taught there's no room for intolerance. He taught you got to show kindness and respect. I'm a man who was influenced by two strangers who stopped and did something that was just magical to me. Their influence has caused me to spend years doing what that man did. He reset breaker points with a match. Because of those men, when I see someone on the side of the road, I stop because I can help. I can help because I was influenced. That man influenced me. He set me down a path to influence others. And whether it's by the side of the road on a broken car or playing football during lunch, when you start seeing people, you change everything. When you see people, you stop fear. You stop hate. Because love always wins. Now, my dad believed in heaven, and he believed in streets of gold. I do too. My single greatest desire after this life is over is to hear, well done. Amen. My request of God is to meet those two black men on streets of gold and hear the words, you done good.
You don't think I love this country? I care about this country with all my heart, even though at times it doesn't love me back.
You think I'm not sad that to some, a time when America was great was a time that is even worse than today for people who look like me?
Do you think I'm not terrified about the hatred, the injustice, and the inequity that's so openly displayed in this country today, especially for brown and black people, people that look like me?
Do you think I'm not angered
by the government shutdown based on a disagreement on how to keep certain people out of the country?
I'm used to things not going my way. I'm sorry that you are not, and that these feelings are so new for you. And excuse me if I get a little offended, but I didn't see all of this outrage when my people were brought over on boats in chains.
I love this country just as much, if not more, than you do.
The biggest difference between us is that I've often had to fight just to simply survive. Yet I still have faith that things will get better. So I persevere and I hold on to hope, just like so many before me.
Well, they give their houses in preparation for the king,
and they line the sidewalks with every sort of shiny thing.
well, they will be surprised when they hear him say, hey, take me to the alley, take me to the afflicted ones, take me to the lonely ones that somehow lost their way.
Let them hear him say, I am your friend.
Come to my table, rest here in my garden. You will have a pardon. Take me to the alley, take me to the afflicted ones, take me to the lonely ones that somehow lost their way.
Let them hear him say, I am your friend.
Come to my table, rest here in my garden. You have a pardon.
They will be surprised when they hear him say,
take me to the alley,
take me to the alley,
take me to the afflicted ones, Take me to the lonely ones that somehow lost their way. Let them hear me say, I am your friend.
Come to my table. Rest here in my garden.
You will have a pardon. You will have a pardon. Take me to the alley.
Take me to
the afflicted ones, the afflicted ones. Take me to the alley. Take me.
Welcome everyone again. In 1972, Representative Henry M. Mishaw Jr. became one of 3 black people to integrate the General Assembly since Reconstruction. This group founded the state's Legislative Black Caucus. For nearly 4 decades, Representative Mishaw's desk was in the front row where North Carolina made history. Representative Mickey Mishaw was born September 4th, 1930, and attended the public schools of Durham, North Carolina, and graduated from Palmer Memorial Institute in Sedalia, North Carolina. He graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree from North Carolina Central University in 1952 and a Juris Doctorate degree with honors in 1964. Further graduate work was completed in business administration and economics at North Carolina Central University and in physiology and biochemistry at Rutgers University. He served in the United States Army Medical Corps from 1952 until 1954 and in the Army Reserves from 1954 until 1960. Representative Mishaw has been a licensed and practicing real estate broker and property casualty agent and broker in the state of North Carolina for more than 50 years. He is a practicing attorney and was admitted to practice before all local and federal courts, including the United States Supreme Court. Representative Mishaw was appointed by President Jimmy Carter in 1977 as the United States Attorney for the Middle District of North Carolina, the first African American to serve in this position in the South. In the words of ABC WTVD correspondent Tim Pulliam, State Representative Mickey Mishaw is North Carolina's longest serving State House member who retired after 43 years in public service. Representative Mishaw of House District 31 in Durham said he never wanted to enter politics, but a nudge from his friend, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., changed his mind and his life. Representative Mishaw has been part of important legislation that includes bills supporting health care, voting rights, economic development, and historically black colleges and universities, such as his alma mater, NCCU, Eagle Pride, where the school's education building is named in his honor. Senator Floyd McKissick stated, Mickey is someone who is a champion and leading access to the legislature on behalf of African Americans, not just for this community, but for the entire state of North Carolina. Mickey has received numerous honors and awards, including the NAACP Humanitarian Award for North Carolina, the North Carolina Justice Center Champion of Justice Award, the Greater Durham Black Chamber of Commerce in 2018 Man of the Year Award, just to name a few. He's married to the former June Elizabeth Williams, and the family consists of 2 adult children and 5 grandchildren. He's also a member of St. Joseph's African Methodist Episcopal Church. Finally, in the words of former Durham City Councilwoman Cora Cole McFadden, there will never be another member of the General Assembly with as influential of an impact on North Carolina's historical progress as Mickey Mishaw. Mickey is an icon, not only for decades of incredible commitment to Durham, but for building a better North Carolina throughout his time in public service. It is my extreme honor and pleasure to welcome Representative Mickey Mishaw.
Well, thank you so much. Gee, you got whoever's running, maybe you can take my picture off here. I don't want to stand up here talking to you, looking at me. Because you know, after such a fine introduction by Ms. Davis, you always want to say it's time to lower the, put the lid down and lower the coffee. But I'm happy to be here today as we begin the celebration of the 90th birthday of Martin Luther King Jr. And it's good to be at Durham Tech, particularly in your own hometown. I always, there's those of us who go out and make these speeches all the time, and we enjoy them. We always like to know to whom we're speaking, and you look over the audience and see how the audience is, and you get a general feeling. But the one thing that happens with all of us who do these types of things is that we want to know how much we're going to get paid for speaking. I mean, you get an honorarium, and so I've become sort of used to it, and I'm computer literate at times. So I put all my speeches in the computer, and when I find out what I'm going to get paid to speak, I put that amount in the computer, and out comes a speech. If you're going to get paid $5,000, you put it in, and out comes a $5,000 speech. Well, when they told me what I was going to get paid for the speech here today, I put it in the computer. And let me see, I got it here. I got it. Oh, here it is. Here it is. And let me conclude. But that's really on a lighter note. I always like to bring us in on a lighter note. But I am pleased to be here. Bill, you've done a great job keeping the school going like this. And I know that we look at you when I was in the legislature, because folks, I'm like Martin now. When Martin did his speech in Washington on that hot August day in 1963, he ended up with "Free at last, free at last." Well, I left the legislature this year, and the last day out in the legislature, my last speech was "Free at last, free at last." Thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. But in a more serious vein, I would like to just simply say to you, as we approach the national celebration of the 90th birthday of Martin Luther King Jr., I cannot help but remember what the man brought to this country and how he was able to bring about changes in this nation that have led to more creative and complete understanding of what and who we are. And moreover, I cannot keep from remembering the warm and close friendship that I had with Martin. And this friendship began right here in the fall of 1956, when I was chosen by the Durham Business and Professional Chain to run the Trade Week program. This was a black organization of all the black entrepreneurs in Durham, and every year in October they had what they call a Trade Week program, which showed off all the black businesses in the community. Well, I was in charge of all of those activities, and I had to get a speaker for the final mass program. And it ran through my mind that I had, this was right near the end of the Montgomery bus boycott movement. And so it crossed my mind that I should probably try to get Dr. King up here to close out our mass meeting, to expose him to the Durham area and how much it meant to all of us at the time. Well, I went to talk to Louis Austin, who was the late editor and publisher of the Carolina Times, and said, "Mr. Austin, I want to bring Martin Luther King Jr. to Durham and for the final Trade Week mass rally." And he said, "That's a good idea. Let's call him." And we called Montgomery, the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, that day. And believe it or not, the young lady who was Martin's secretary at the time was, I had known her, she and her daughter, and I, who had a daughter and I, who had gone to school together at Palmer Memorial Institute. Anyway, Ms. Proctor said, "Well, Dr. King's not in right now. He should be in within the next hour, and give me a little time, and I'll have him call you." Well, sure enough, he called, and he said, "I've always wanted to come to Durham because Durham, as it is today with Atlanta, these were cities that vied with each other as to who could make the more progress." And so he said, "Mickey, you come on." I said, "Well, the other thing, Martin, is I know your brother at that time, A.D. He and I were in school together. A.D. was Martin's older brother, and he came to Palmer when Dr. Brown was there, but Dr. Brown couldn't handle A.D. too well, so she called Daddy King, said, "You had to come get this boy, nothing I can do with him." But anyway, Martin came, and his appearance in Durham led to a friendship that I've had the pleasure of enjoying and remembering for years on end. And on that visit and many other visits that he made to Durham, he stayed with my parents, where I was living particularly at that time. There were two things that stand out. Martin and I discovered, like I said, that I had been in school with A.D., his brother, and that for some reason or other he loved my mother's cooking. And he always wanted to make sure, he said, "This is one place I will always return." And I think that was probably what got us to be pretty good, close friends. Over the years, I had the good fortune to be able to sit and talk with this man for many, many hours. And from those talks, there emerged the picture of an intelligent, perceptive, committed person who thought not of himself, but of people who were not able to enjoy the fruits of democracy because they happened to be born black or were poor and unlettered. I was amazed on many occasions how deeply this man felt about conditions and how he so much wanted to correct them. Many times in those talks, he would fleetingly mention the fact that he feared for his life. Then, in the next instant, he would go on philosophically about the problems and the best way to solve them. Now, Martin's ability to inspire was also brought out in these talks. They were held around our dining room table. Now, I have to tell you about that too. My father never gave up his seat at the head of the table. He was the head of the family. Well, we walked in the dining room one day, and I looked around, and my father was sitting on the side. Martin was sitting at the head of the table. First time in my life I had ever seen my father give up his seat at the head of the family table for Martin Luther King Jr. I said, if he can transform my father, he can transform a whole lot of other folks doing that. And but the other effect on my family was that Martin studied at Boston University. And I think he had an influence on my brother, who finally decided to go to Boston University. Well, there was another connection with Boston University most folks don't know about. Martin's professor of preaching, Allen Knight Chalmers, was a guest in our home also. Now, you have to understand that during that period of time, Allen Knight Chalmers, who was white, and Martin's professor of preaching, was also the treasurer of the National NAACP at that time. So there was a connection there, and like I say, he stayed with us. And one of the things that Allen Knight Chalmers told us about Martin was that he didn't teach Martin, Martin taught him. He was used to, white preachers. He was not used to hearing black preachers preach the way they do, the soulful way of preaching. And he said, more than anything, he learned that he had to expand his vision of preaching because of the way Martin brought to him as a student. But anyway, one of the things that Martin and I talked about on many occasions was the fact that in spite of everything that was happening, progress being made, we as a people needed political power more desperately than any other group in American society. He said because politics was the door opener to gaining economic strength, to valued patriotism, and to opening up the country to the ideals so clearly expressed in our Constitution. I took him at his word and made a conscious decision that my role would be one which involved political activity. I remember very vividly one night we were sitting there talking, and Martin said, you know, Mickey, he said, you make a good politician. I said, Martin, you're out of your ever-loving mind. It'll never happen. In 1964, I made the decision to get involved in politics, and one of the persons that I involved in my campaign was a fellow named Maynard Jackson, who was my law school classmate. Many of you don't know Maynard was the first black mayor of Atlanta, graduated from North Carolina Central University Law School, and worked in that first campaign I had in 1964. And after I had told Maynard that we were seniors in law school that year, that I was going to get involved in politics, he said, well, have you called Martin and told him? I said, no. He said, well, we need to call him right now and tell him you finally going to do something. I said, hey, fine, I've been arrested a couple of times already. So we called Martin and got him, and Martin said, it's about damn time you did something I told you to do. And from that point on, that more solidified our relationship a whole lot more. That friendship that I had with him lasted only 12 years, but as I look back on it, I can see the effect that it had on me and how I was made much more sensitive to conditions, environment, and people around me. Hopefully, that sensitivity is something that I will never, ever lose. When I reminisce about the friendship that existed with Martin, I cannot help but recall the words of the person from whom he took his name. The great theologian Martin Luther wrote as his epitaph, "I neither can nor will recant anything, since it is neither right nor safe to act against conscience. Here I stand, I can do no other." Martin Luther King Jr. at a later time, in another place, stood his ground and could do no other in the struggle against bigotry, injustice, and morality. By that stand and with his friendship ever present, I glean what I considered to be the cornerstones of his life: clear vision, courage, and determination. So, there's a celebration going on out there right now, and most people are a bit confused about what we are celebrating. This holiday honoring Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday is celebrating much more than a man and his life. It celebrates the triumph of a people, and not just the triumph of African Americans, but the triumph of all races and ethnic groups together over legalized racism and injustices. This in no way detracts from the unique significance and prominence of Martin Luther King Jr. It merely admits that often ignored fact that he too was the product of forces that shaped our country and made possible the confrontation of an evil system without resorting to violence against person or property. He symbolized the best of the Southern African-American Judeo-Christian experience and invited us to share his dream, the American dream. And he lived out the true meaning of those words many of us utter to show our patriotism. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men, and parenthetically women and children, rich and poor, young and old, black, white, red, or yellow, are endowed, created equal, and are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among them the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Martin was the embodiment of an idea whose time had come, and it had to come to some place and to some group of people, and had to be expressed against in the midst of some historic conflict. Normally, in the history of mankind, differences as profound as the racial and cultural differences that exist in our nation produce an escalation of violence as the forces of liberation seek to throw off the historic injustice. You must remember that African Americans had been brought to these shores as slaves. We labored without wages to build railroads and to make cotton king. We fought in every war since Crispus Attucks became the first American to be killed opposing the rule of England. But still, the nation labored under the stigma of race as a somehow limited phenomenon. Had history taken its normal course, America would have suffered violence not unlike other stages or conflict in our times. All of the ingredients were present. Veterans returning from recent police actions and wars were well armed and well trained in the skills of violence. Almost every black household and white household possessed a small arsenal, and the traditional American way would have given rise to a violent conflagration escalating to the point of mutual destruction. And we can see history basically repeating itself today, which is what one of the things that in my retirement, I want to make sure that we don't forget that four-legged stool that Martin set out to do. The first was to gain a recognition of who we are. The second was to be able to have the franchise like every other American person had. The third was to be sure that we would be free to live wherever we wanted to live, but the fourth one still escapes us. And that fourth leg is the leg of equality. But on the night of January the 30th in 1956, after a vigilante white gang had bombed Martin's home in Montgomery while his wife and newborn daughter lay sleeping, when a crowd of African Americans showed up at his house armed for retaliation, Martin offered them a more excellent way, a way of constructive, nonviolent action that would attempt to redeem America, not destroy her. That is worth celebration by all of us. We are also paused to celebrate a courageous judiciary that really enabled the Constitution of our nation to open its vision of justice to all citizens. At this point, I remember and many of you have read about the march from Selma to Montgomery. I get a call from Bernard Lee, who was Martin's aide, said, Mickey, Doc wants you to be down here with us in Selma. And I said, well, that's great, Bernard, but have you got, there was a suit filed in court to make sure that marchers could do that march from Selma to Alabama. And I said, well, have you gotten the order from the court yet that will allow you to do it without any conflict? He said, no. He said, but Doc and the people are determined that this is what's going to happen. And it did happen, and it ended up in Bloody Sunday. Many of you have seen the film on that. I was not there. It was one of those times that I didn't show up. Martin called me the next day and said, we're going back. I said, well, Martin, the judge has not given you any order yet to do that. He said, we don't care. This is really going to be peaceful, because what we're going to do is we're going to march to the bridge, kneel down and pray, and turn around and come back. That was what we termed Turnaround Tuesday. I finally joined the march the night before they got to Montgomery. I joined the night the party happened. I mean, you know, Harry Belafonte, Sammy Davis Jr., all these folks were there. That's when I joined the march. I had told Martin a long time ago, I said, Martin, you're the pacifist. I'm not. So if somebody hit me, I'm going to knock hell out of them. He said, you'll learn. He said, you'll learn. And that's why I brought the incident about what happened that night in January when the folks bombed this house, when Coretta and Yoki were in the house at the time. And he said at that point he was really ready to go fight. But then when he saw all these people out there ready to create a war, what Gandhi had told him came back to him and let him move forward. But that's why I mentioned the judiciary, because at that time, on the following Wednesday, I think it was, maybe a week or two later, the order did come down from the court allowing the Selma to Montgomery march. But the other thing that I want to bring to your attention too is the church. We celebrate a church that struggled with the Southern status quo, but ultimately was born again into a new understanding of the nature of God, who made of one blood all the nations on the earth, and whose justice rolled down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. And for a while, we had gotten away from things. We have institutions in our own community that provide us with the way to bring about complete and total social justice, to bring about the equality that was for that last stool. At one time, we had our historically black colleges and universities and schools that were so concerned about saving themselves that they forgot about the present oppressive life that they were witnessing at the time. And there were so many churches in our community that were concerned about the future life over yonder that they forgot about the present life over here. And there were people who were getting all they canning all they get while sitting on their cans. And the problem is now we are beginning to see history repeat itself. And if we don't watch out, we're going to be right back where we were 40 years ago. Well, let me move on. We celebrate the unsung heroes and heroines of the movement, the masses of people who joined the struggle, who suffered, persevered, and helped to change the nation. Many are only faces in the countless pictures and tapes, but memories of their spirit remain as a reminder that we must continue, as Martin did, to correct injustices facing the least of these in our society. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday does not celebrate an end to the struggle against injustice. It is the celebration of a new and more powerful, more creative, and more productive method of struggle. A method of life, not death, a method of confrontation without destruction, a method of reconciliation without resignation or submission, a method of truth and love, overcoming false illusion and hatred, nonviolence, aggressive, organized, disciplined, strengthened by goodwill. Martin's concept and tactics for disciplined, nonviolent change are now generally applied and accepted as the most effective means of accommodating our differences. Martin was so far ahead of his time that we still, today, are not sure how to celebrate his dream. But each year, believe me, each year we'll learn a bit more from the prophet who walked among us. I can remember March on Washington. I was in Chicago at the time at a real estate meeting, and I get a call from Martin. He says, "You need to be in Washington." I said, "What for?" He said, "Well, we got this march going on, and we're looking for a crowd of people." I said, "Ain't nobody gonna be there, Martin, you know that." And we talked for a little bit more. I said, "Okay." I got a plane and flew into Washington. Bernard picked me up at the airport and went to the hotel. And in the process of going from the airport to the hotel, I had never seen as many folks in one place as I did that morning. I got to the hotel. Martin said, "Well, what do you think?" I said, "Martin, I ain't never seen that many people before in my life. What are you going to tell them?" He said, "I don't know. I got a little something here written out. I'm thinking what I'm going to tell them." But from that point on, I knew that man, it just more, I was more convinced at that time that there was more to him than actually what met the eye. I flew back to Chicago, had my meeting, and talked with Martin a little bit later. I said, I just couldn't believe that there were over 250,000 people at a rally like that, and why we were still in the throes of problems that we had. But I'm going to try to leave you now with something that a lot of people ask today. What would Martin do, or what would Martin say at this day, at this moment of time? Nobody knows what he would say or what he would do, but you can try to think because of what his life meant to this country and to the rest of the world. You've got apartheid gone in South Africa. After 27 years, all of these things came about as a result of the movement that Martin Luther King Jr. started in well, actually, to tell you the truth, Martin didn't start it. Martin got thrust into it. He would tell you that he didn't want to do it to begin with, but he was the new kid on the block. And the old folks down there didn't want to take too many chances, so they threw the new kid on the block in the middle of a conflagration. Well, I gleaned, as I said before, a lot from my friendship with Martin. And the one thing that I would say is that I would think that if he were here today, that he would probably ask that you follow a creed that I have followed most of my life. Something like this. I do not choose to be a common man. It is my right to be uncommon if I can. I seek opportunity, not security. I do not wish to be a kept citizen, humbled and dulled by having the light look after me. I want to take the calculated risk to dream and to build, to fail and to succeed. I refuse to barter incentive for a dole. I prefer the challenge of life to the guaranteed existence, the thrill of fulfillment to the stale calm of utopia. I will not trade my freedom for beneficence, nor my dignity for a handout. It is my heritage to stand erect, proud, and unafraid, to think and act for myself, enjoy the benefit of my creations, and to face the world boldly and say, "This I have done." In the words of Martin Luther King and the words of the great theologian Martin Luther, here I stand, I can do no other. I want to close with 2 points. One is, and I say this to you very sincerely, something I had the privilege of learning when I read Dante's Inferno. The hottest places in hell are reserved for those who take a position of neutrality in the face of a moral crisis. Think about that. Think about what's happening today. Think about where we are going as a country today. Had not we had a Martin Luther King Jr. to put dreams and ideals before us, think of what kind of shape we would really be in had that not been offered to our country today. The last thing is my benediction. Now, y'all might not believe, but I get out of Durham every now and then. I went to New York one time and I saw the stage musical Pearlie. And Pearlie was the story of an old southern plantation. And the plantation owner had died. And he had 2 services, one at the white church and one at the black church. And at the black church, Reverend Pearlie preached his funeral. And as they ended that service, Reverend Pearlie gave a benediction. And this is the benediction I want to leave with you. Today, my friends, I find in being black a thing of beauty, a joy, a secret cup of gladness, a native land in every time and place, a native land in every black person's face. Be loyal to yourself, your hair, your lips, your southern speech, your laughing kindness. A black person's kingdom vast as any other, accepting full the sweetness of your blackness, not wishing to be white, nor red, nor yellow, nor any other race or face but this. Farewell, my deep and Africanic brothers and sisters. Be brave. Keep freedom in the family. Do what you can for the white folks and write me in care of the post office. And now, may the Constitution of the United States go with you, the Declaration of Independence stand by you, the Bill of Rights protect you, and may your own dreams be your only boundaries, henceforth, now, and forever. Thank you so much.
Okay, so that's a tough one to follow. Hi folks, my name is Jess Dormady. I'm the coordinator for the Center for College and Community Service. This afternoon we have 2 service projects directly following lunch, and we plan to start these promptly at 1 p.m., although I've been made aware that is not too far off from right now. So our off-campus service project will take place at Burton Elementary School. We will be repairing and painting items in the children's play area, and we'll also paint a new space to serve as the teacher's lounge. If you signed up for Burton Elementary, we will be meeting at the Wynn lobby at 12:40, 12:50-ish maybe. We're going to try to get there at 1 o'clock, and I realize that's kind of cutting our Burton volunteers short for lunch, so I think there might be some pizzas in your future. And I hope the rest of you, though, will attend the Crafternoon for a Cause event in the cafe this afternoon from 1 to 4. We'll be crocheting sleeping mats made of plastic bags for homeless persons, making fleece tie-in blankets for Project Linus for some children, and making port pillows for chemotherapy patients. And all of these items from Crafternoon for a Cause will be donated locally here in Durham. So this upcoming MLK Day actually marks the Campus Harvest Food Pantry's 6-year anniversary. Last year, yay! Last year, the food pantry served 570 unique individuals on a reoccurring basis. Our food goes home to students to feed approximately 600 children and another 1,000 adults. So our food has a pretty, I'd say, good reach. For 2019, we are launching a new food pantry donation campaign called Sponsor a Shelf. And I'm going to play a video real quick, and then I'll explain a little bit more about how you can participate. Sponsor a Shelf is an opportunity that employees and students on campus can become more engaged in supporting the Campus Harvest Food Pantry.
We had great success when we had past departments sponsor the pantry for a month or so, but we wanted to offer the chance for departments to sponsor a shelf because that's really what we need the most help with. So we need a lot of help getting our breakfast items, our protein items, and the frequently used items restocked. So we really wanted to offer the opportunity for a lot of departments who are already interested and have been so responsive and so supportive of us to get some recognition by putting their name on a shelf and letting them sponsor that.
I found myself unemployed and having the job upgrade my skills, and I found the food pantry, and it's been a wonderful impact on me. It comes in a time of need. It's our wonderful blessing. Get to share with my family I otherwise wouldn't have the money to do. My needs are being met, and I really didn't ask for it. It was just offered in the place that I'm trying to upgrade my skills to be a better employee in the community.
I think the most important impact for students in a very general way is for them to feel supported on campus, to know that there are people who support them and care about them and recognize that there's more to them than just what they do in the classroom. There's also their lives outside the classroom, and there's a lot of things that they contend with outside the classroom just to get here, get to school, to get their homework in, and to be good students. And so I think that recognizing that they have some unmet needs outside the classroom it makes them feel like we recognize them, we see them. And I think that's very important for our students.
Being able to come here as a student, being able to have access to snacks on Monday, Tuesday, and then we get groceries on Wednesdays and Thursdays. So the snacks and the groceries has been a great help to me.
It's always wonderful for us to see students who maybe have utilized the pantry, but then they come and they can donate to the pantry. They have a lot of pride in being able to come back, and maybe they were in a very rough spot, but maybe they've already graduated, or maybe they're in just a different space financially while they're still a student here, but for them to be able to come back and give, whether that's through pantry donations or it's through their time by volunteering, that's a really big turning point for them. And that's what we would love to see from our students, is for them to get that sense of kind of self-efficacy and that sense of agency and that feeling of pride.
Without the food pantry, we'd be low on food ourselves. And so it's really nice knowing that we can come here. We don't have food insecurities as much. Yeah, better food does help with you make better grades.
Thank you, Marcy, for making that video. So for our Sponsor a Shelf campaign, we are asking employee departments, student clubs, and community groups to sponsor a shelf in the food pantry on a semester-by-semester basis. So this is how it works. Select a shelf and provide your group's contact person. Your designated shelf will be labeled. This shelf is sponsored by your department name. When items on that shelf run low, I will email your contact person to alert your group, and then your group will bring in the needed items to restock the shelf. We have created some yellow handouts here that kind of explain the process, and the chart also talks about our needs from high to low, so you can kind of figure out what would be the best fit for your group or department. And you can get these yellow sheets and learn more. You can actually see Ukiah and Ramey back there, stand-up girls. They'll be at a table out in the lobby, so you can come get a sheet and kind of know what you're getting into before you sign up. All right, so thank you for everyone who donated items for the Crafternoon for a Cause event. I never want to see a plastic bag again in my life. And I hope to see you guys at the service events today. Thank you.
Dr. King said, "The function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education." The I Have a Dream Award is our way of keeping his dream alive. Thank you all for your help in supporting this annual award by either purchasing a spaghetti lunch, a raffle ticket, or by donating a part of your paycheck to this award annually. This is an opportunity for our students to reach either their educational or career goals. The I Have a Dream Award is given to 2 students. One student who is completing a continuing education program that leads to a credential, and another award is to a student completing a degree program. Those students must meet specific criteria and submit an essay based on a quote from Dr. King and how that quote impacts their lives. Each award winner is presented with an award once they read their winning essay. Today, I am pleased to announce our winners. Our winners this year for 2019 are Edith Ogola and Melissa Urban. So I would like to ask if Melissa will come first and read her essay, and we will present her with her award. Then afterwards, that Edith will come and we will present her award.
Good afternoon, everyone. I will begin by sharing the quote that spoke the most to me from Dr. King. "Keep moving, for it may well be the greatest song that has not been sung. the greatest book that has not been written, the highest mountain that has not been climbed. This is your challenge. Reach out and grab it, but there is something we can learn that we must keep moving. If you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But by all means, keep moving. Deciding on an educational and career path has been one of the most challenging tasks to date. Having received my Associate of Science from Durham Tech and my Bachelor's in Nutrition and Dietetics at App State, I can confidently say that I have finally found the missing link to reach my personal and professional goals in the aesthetics program here at Durham Tech. Dealing with skin troubles of my own kindled an interest in how things work in the body from the inside out. Attaining a career in skincare has been a very personal and emotional journey, but I am grateful to say that my pain has led me to my passion. My ultimate goal is to combine nutrition and skincare to provide individualized care, education, and confidence for clients to exceed their health and skincare needs. Dr. King's quote relates to the first mountain I have truly climbed, 3,333 feet high in Boone, to receive my Bachelor's of Science in Nutrition and Dietetics. I sacrificed 5 years living on a college budget, and soon after graduated, I made a heartfelt decision to go back to school as a night class continuing education student, which was not an easy choice. My family has taught me to always live within our means, and those words still serve my family well. Although still in debt with student loans and car payments, I have the desire to develop a skincare line and to write a field-related book. It is a daunting task to think about how it can all be done. However, Dr. King's quote has provided me with comfort and reassurance when he said, "We must keep moving." This statement serves as a reminder that action will get you where you want to be. As an employee in the medical aesthetics industry and as a continuing education student, it requires a great amount of sacrifice and discipline. Juggling responsibilities at work, school, and at home can often be mentally draining. Things such as getting enough sleep and free time are non-existent as a working night class student, and they are easily taken for granted. Dr. King's quote is a reminder that this is only a temporary phase in the grand scheme of things. Sometimes we fly, we walk, we crawl, or we run to the places we are trying to get to in life. It is not always smooth sailing. It has taken quite some time to simply accept that life does not happen on our own timeline. Life is full of challenges and painful trials, but in due time, we will see why we must suffer. These challenges shape us into who we are meant to be long before we are shown the beauty and the light of the circumstances. We must keep moving, although it may not be at the pace we want to be. The end goal of becoming a licensed esthetician is worth the climb of the highest mountain. Thank you.
So please join me in congratulating Melissa on being an I Have a Dream Award winner. We have her check, her monetary award, and a certificate. So thank you, Melissa. Congratulate her. Our next award winner is Edith Ogola, and she will come and she will read her essay.
Good afternoon, everyone. I choose a quote that says, "We cannot walk alone, and as we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead together, and we cannot turn back." I gave my essay a name that says, "Never Gives Up." The civil rights movement activist Martin Luther King Jr. delivered a public speech from the strip of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. on August 28, 1963, in support of civil and economic rights and an end of racism in the United States. During the speech, he used the word, "I have a dream," to compare the past and the future. In this speech, he used this quote that we cannot walk alone, and as we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead together. We cannot. This quote inspired me to think of togetherness, my future, and the way forward towards attaining my degree. It makes me feel that I cannot achieve my dream to complete my education and career goal as an individual, but by collaborating with others. The quote guides me to bond with fellow students, lecturers, advisors, and the entire community of the Durham Tech Institution. Creating the foundation of teamwork and knowledge does not require books only. It also needs communications as a key network among the team players. For that, this quote has motivated me to continue pursuing my education achievement by adhering to the institution policy guidelines. Constantly maintaining a high level of discipline, attending classes promptly, and submitting homework as requested by the teachers. This has assisted me to set a steady pace for progressing with studies in timely manner, which has helped to attain the desired goals. It is commitment to always march ahead and do the best. I believe that the time utilized in studies reflects on the results. Therefore, it is an advance to success. In conclusion, learning is a process which, if not understood, becomes a burden. Therefore, the will to learn must be attained through quality performance and stability of better grades to proceed to completion. This quote is a driving factor because it inspires me to be a team player, a pace settler, and focus winner who never gives up.
So please help me again to congratulate Edith Ogola on being an I Have a Dream Award winner.
Peace and blessings. I'm Audrey Muhammad, an instructor here at Durham Tech, and I want to thank Dr. Ingram and everyone for allowing me this opportunity to share a nursery rhyme, or actually a history rhyme, about Martin Luther King Jr. We've come a long way, but we have a long way to go, but we've come a long way, demonstrated by our unity here today. But I wanted to share a short story of how I came up with this nursery rhyme, or history rhyme. I try to say history rhyme now because when I was doing a book signing at a library and I was reading the nursery rhymes, and one young man around 8 years old, he said, actually, they're history rhymes. You should call them history rhymes instead of nursery rhymes. I said, I'm going to start marketing it that way too. But my brother, who is an educator in Georgia, and I were talking about the different nursery rhymes that we grew up learning, Jack Be Nimble, Mary Had a Little Lamb, and we just rattled off these nursery rhymes, and we realized, what did we learn from them? I mean, you learned something cute, okay? And I said, what if we came up with our own nursery rhymes? History and you know, being an educator, that was my focus. I started teaching Sunday school in church and writing and things like that. So that's how Martin Luther King had a little dream. That nursery rhyme was born. And I want to thank Jennifer Bennett, whose son memorized the nursery rhyme, because we all remember, if I asked you to recite Mary Had a Little Lamb, all of us would be able to do it, right? So this is an opportunity, a fun way to learn history, because not only is Martin Had a Little Dream in my book, but also nursery rhymes about Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass. Even my daughter, who grew up with these, won a quiz bowl because she actually was the only person who knew the answer because of the nursery rhymes. And they said, who made the stoplight on the pole? She said, go Garrett, go. He made the stoplight on the pole. So Garrett Morgan invented the stoplight, so she learned a lot about history. So I want to turn it over to the video of Jacob, who recited Martin Had a Little Dream.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up.
Martin had a little dream, a little dream, a little dream. Martin had a little dream, peace and equality. But everywhere that Martin went, everywhere that Martin went, he was treated unequally. The dream followed him around the world one day. He died before it was a reality.
It really boils down to this, that all life is interrelated. We are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny, and whatever affects one directly, yes, sir, affects all indirectly.
Let's give Jacob a hand. So I do have a gift for Representative Mickey Mashaw. I do have one for you, and we have a door prize that we're going to give one away. And those who, I only have a few copies. If you do get one, if you purchase one today, my husband will give you a free Martin Luther King nursery rhyme calendar. Okay. Okay, so the winner of the door prize, if you have the number 1335184. Today is your day.
Thank you. You want to see the ticket? You want to see the ticket? Oh,
yeah, this is it. So thanks again, and Ms. Mitchell, thank you also for the opportunity. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. Let us, first of all, once again, express our appreciation to the MLK Choir. Thank you again for sharing your talent with us as you do every year. I know we'll hear from you again in a few minutes. I also want to thank Jacqueline Mitchell and the members of the MLK Planning Committee. You've been working on this for over 6 months. I know it's a labor of love. I'd like the members of the committee to please stand so we can thank them for their great work today. Mickey, thank you. We thank you for being here today to share your experiences, and we thank you for your over 40 years of advocacy and selfless service as a member of the North Carolina General Assembly. We are so happy that you followed Martin's advice and entered public service. Your voice will be missed in Raleigh, and it is always welcome here. Congratulations to our essay winners. It is always gratifying to hear our students' reflections on the legacy of Dr. King. And I want to thank everyone else who has been a presenter and engaged in this event. One of the things that we should be very proud of here at Durham Tech is that we've been celebrating the birth of Dr. Martin Luther King for over 34 years, since before it was a recognized national holiday. Credit for that, of course, goes to my friend, colleague, predecessor, and mentor, the late Dr. Phale Wynne Jr. Phale, you left us far too soon. We do live in uncertain times, and I think as Mickey alluded to, history has a tendency to, if not repeat itself, at least in the words of Mark Twain, history doesn't repeat itself, but it sometimes rhymes. I've been thinking a lot lately about the spiritual and folk song, We Shall Overcome. Like many folk songs, it has evolved in both musically and in lyrical meaning over time. The tune itself is derived from an 18th century Catholic hymn, while the lyrics evolved from an African American hymn, I'll Overcome Someday, written around the turn of the 20th century by the Reverend Charles Albert Tindley. By mid-century, it had evolved into the song we sing today, more or less, and was used after the Second World War in labor movement protests. Its roots as an anthem for the civil rights movement can really be traced to Raleigh, North Carolina, where it was sung at the organizing meeting of the Student Nonviolent Steering Committee in 1960. As interpreted today, we know the song speaks to a time when the downtrodden will overcome the forces of injustice and oppression that are rampant in today's world. In that context, it's a touchstone of hope in the ongoing struggle for racial equality. Now, Charles Tindley was a self-educated minister in the Methodist Episcopal Church, born of a slave father and a free mother in the decade before the Civil War. And while, as the title indicates, his song describes the struggle for the attainment of a better human condition, the nature of that struggle is far different than in the version that was eventually made popular by Pete Seeger. His song begins, "The world is one great battlefield with forces all arrayed. If in my heart I do not yield, I'll overcome someday. Both seen and unseen powers join to drive my soul astray. But with his word, a sword of mine, I'll overcome someday. Later, 1,000 snares are set for me, and mountains in the way. If Jesus will my leader be, I'll overcome someday." So the original song did not speak about overcoming the external obstacles that were impediments to equality, as much as it described the inner struggle to do the right thing. And this has special meaning for me as I reflect on my journey to where I am here today. Now, Nate and I are in the same general generation, but unlike him. I was raised in a working class suburb of Columbus, Ohio, where in the late 1950s and 1960s, the local realtors had entered into a gentleman's agreement to not sell houses to people of color. So it was not until I went to high school that I met and engaged with black people. Now, despite what was happening in Durham at that time and across the country, I can recall no real racial unrest in the high school that was technically integrated, but in a high school where black students and white students pretty much stayed to themselves. Looking back, I'm sure there were demonstrations, I know there were demonstrations and protests occurring in Columbus and elsewhere, but they were absent in my white enclave. Now, as I said, the school was integrated, but really truly segregated, but because I was a football player, I had closer relationships with many black students than many of my white counterparts. But I have to say that I didn't have any black friends. And I have to admit that because my upbringing in this entirely white environment, I grew up thinking of black people as different, not less intelligent or less capable or less ambitious, because my mother was very was deliberate about teaching me that, but yet somehow different. Now, intellectually, I know that this is not true. Intellectually, I understand that this is factually incorrect. But I still must admit today, half a century later, that remnants of that sense of different remain a small part of who I am. And like the narrator in Charles Tinley's version of the song, I hope to overcome that someday. I am in no way suggesting that a middle-aged, middle-class white guy's struggle to overcome a prejudice that was largely the byproduct of advantage comes close to the depth or magnitude to those who have faced discrimination, bigotry, oppression, and violence as a matter of routine in their lives. And I'm not comparing my sense of difference with the beliefs of C.P. Ellis. What he achieved by overcoming his upbringing to develop the friendship with Anne Atwater was much more profound. And surely Anne Atwater had much to overcome personally in order to reach out to Ellis, a man, as we know, who had initially hated her simply because of the color of her skin. But like them, I realize there are things in me I need to let go of, to overcome, in order to be the person I want to be. And it is only after each of us overcomes those seen and unseen powers joined to lead our souls astray that we can begin to collectively overcome bigotry, hatred, and violence that's present in everyday life. We must first confront our own personal prejudices before we can attempt to address them in the world. And then, and only then, can we be touched, in the words of Abraham Lincoln, by the better angels of our nature. I shall overcome someday so that we can overcome. Thank you.
I'm still young enough to try and figure out what I want to do with my life when I grow up. I'm not exactly sure what I want to do, but I know I want to be famous. When I tell people that, I usually get, if you want to play in the NBA, or do you want to be a rapper? I've never been good enough to even play basketball, or even to try to rap along with the radio. So I knew that the music industry isn't my ticket to fame. I don't know, maybe I'll be the next Bill Gates, or design my own line of shoes, or even find a cure for cancer. I just know that I want people to know my name, up in the lights, on social media, however or wherever.
Well, I sure was a naive young man. I had big dreams. I wanted everybody to know my name. But I wasn't ready for the realities of life. I had to learn a whole lot of lessons the hard way. Sometimes it's, you know, like the Good Times song, keeping your head above water. Man. You know what? Most of us don't even have the time, the energy, the opportunity to even become famous. We're spending most of our time struggling to survive. Or you know what? Sometimes fighting, which is even worse. Fighting to be a man, fighting to be respected, fighting to be seen, fighting to be treated as equal or viewed as such, certainly not less than.
I've had lots of ups and downs in my life, but overall, it's been a good life. There have been many lessons to learn along the way, but I'm so much wiser for having learned them. One of the greatest lessons that I've learned is that life isn't easy, but that you don't have to navigate it alone. To understand that, I first had to realize humility and trust. I had to accept that I didn't know everything, but that there were others who could and wanted to help me by sharing their own life lessons. These others are now the people that I call my brothers. My father tried to tell me, but I thought I knew everything. And then I had to learn better. And now I try to teach the young ones better.
Demands, and the job will take you far.
Your dreams ain't easy, but just stand by your plan. To go from voice to man, you must act like a man. When it gets hard, y'all, just grab what you know. Stand up tall and don't you fall. You will know. what you know. Stand up tall and don't you fall. You will know. You will know. You will know. You will know.
You know, I traveled home for the holidays, and I had an opportunity to visit my old church home. But it was so different than what I remembered. Different people, different songs, chairs instead of pews. I remember my son getting the strangest look on his face, as if to ask me, "Is this really the church you grew up in, Mom?" And it got me to thinking about how different people praise him in different ways. How do you praise him?
I praise him by lifting my hands.
I praise him with singing. When the praises go up, God's blessings come down.
I praise him with words. Matthew 7:12 states, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." So sit still and remember, when others do you wrong, God's gonna do you right.
I praise him with my instrument and dance.
And I praise him in fellowship with other believers. I was glad when they said unto me, "Let us go into the house of the Lord." Now everybody come on out and let's clap our hands.